As I said, welcome everybody. It's August 5th, 2021. We're talking about office space today. As everyone should know, we record these sessions and we put them out on YouTube. So a lot of you are actually on YouTube right now watching this. Because about half of our people who participate actually participate through YouTube. So they join us and they get a chance to watch these. And I hear back from them because they often email me. And so I appreciate all those emails you send to me. It keeps us going. It's another initiative. But today we're talking about office space. We did do this presentation. I'll have some new things to say about it today, but we did do this presentation. I think it was like in October. And if you want, reach out to me if you're on YouTube, and I'll send you the newsletter article. I just put it in the chat to everybody, so you can read it. I did the presentation. I was reading through it, and then I decided I'm going to write it down. And it's a newsletter article, so I can give that to the independent consulting TIG. And when I was uploading it, I was looking at all of my submissions, and I realized I'd already written a newsletter article on this exact same topic as I was uploading it. So I don't even know what I wrote. I wrote that like 7 months ago. So on the same topic, maybe it says all the same things. It'll be interesting to look at two different takes on the exact same topics with I know I'd probably have the same structure. So I have to look at what I wrote before. I don't even remember anymore. But anyway, we're going to talk about office space today, and jump into it. So as you'll see, okay, there we go. I want to kind of talk through pros and cons and a lot of different things. So we're starting with working from home. I don't have to spend a lot of time talking about this because almost everybody has either worked from home, currently works from home, or understands the perspectives. I mean, the big pro on this is it's inexpensive. You're already living there. So if you can find a way to make it work in your space, there's not a lot of upfront costs because you're already there. I mean, the commute's fantastic. Your pets love it. It's their preferred location for you to work. I can tell you that. I think pets have had the best year of their lives over the last 18 months because they've been able to have easy access to their owners, right? Some things you want to think about, make sure you're thinking about, is paying yourself rent or making sure you understand the tax benefits of working from home. So because I'm an S Corp, I set up within my corporate structure to identify how much square footage I have and understand what that cost is relative to all of the rest of the costs in my house. And so it's $265.49 a month to be exact. And I pay my wife actually, but I pay the landowner, the leaser, $265.49 per month, plus some other things that are some utilities. And that's how we get it. And that's basically free money, right? It's not free because there's a cost to have that house. But I do have a home office in addition to my lease space downtown Edwardsville. Obviously, the con is it's difficult to work in person with others. I mean, Kamala is in her own house and she lives by herself. So that's maybe not the case. But for me, I have 3 children, a mother-in-law, 2 dogs, and my wife, of course. And my wife now works from home. So it's not as easy to have people come in and sit down and have meetings, though I've done it. And I also have, when I first started working with Tom, my coworker, one of my coworkers, he actually worked in the office with me upstairs across the hall from my son's bedroom. And we propped a couch up and it sat there precariously like it was going to fall on his head. And but he was fine. We made it work, but that was not ideal, particularly when we both went to meetings in separate locations, and I was still in a meeting and he didn't have a place to go, so I wasn't able to let him in. And I suppose we could have set it up where he could have just let himself in, but it gets to an awkward stage. So when you're working with others on a day-to-day basis in real life, it's not going to be too ideal to work from home. The other piece is you're going to get interrupted, right? You're going to have, and we all know this. I put these ideas together before COVID, but you're going to be interrupted by kids or your spouse, your dog, or your mother-in-law. It's just going to be the sort of thing that happens. But you get this. This is like old hat for you guys. Now, another idea, and I don't think this is a sustainable idea, but I do know people who try to make this an ongoing regular thing, like their permanent location, is to work from a coffee shop or a library. I don't know anybody who does this long term in our business, in the independent consulting business, but I know people in my community who just hang out and work from Starbucks, and I guess Starbucks makes that work. It's pro is it's free, right? Sort of free. You've got free Wi-Fi, but you are going to inevitably spend more money on food and beverages, and maybe even more in the way of calories that you're not planning on. So you got to be careful around that, and it's not private. But you know, I think this is actually more of a good working environment for when you're traveling, and it's something to think about. Now, this is an important thing. If you are traveling and you need to set up conference space, or you need to have a private working space, look at the libraries. Libraries oftentimes will either provide you a free, you know, you could just walk into any library and get free Wi-Fi, but you may be able to get a private office space or you know, a study room in the middle of the day because they're not being used. Oftentimes those are being used by, you know, teenagers and college students who need them at night, and they're not being used in the middle of the day. But you can go in, and I've done this several times, and that works when you're on the road. Oh wait, so Kristen asked me, do you write your wife a check each month for office rent because her name is on the deed to the house? Does that matter? No, she just manages the household finances. So I write it. I technically transfer funds into our shared checking account, Kristen, and so it's still in my name. It's just in a personal. It goes from the business account, and it's U.S. Bank, so it's just an internal transfer, bank transfer. And so I just don't. While it has my name on that account, I don't really. I'm not allowed to touch that account too much because she balances it so carefully. But with the coffee shop and the library, that's an idea to work when you're on the road, or if you need it for a short-term perspective. Oh, you also have Amy points out you have access to library, magazines, journals, news subscriptions, and so every library is going to be different. Some might encourage this, some might encourage co-working spaces. And that kind of environment. There's certainly, if you spend enough time at a library, if you go there, you'll see the same, usually retired folks who show up every day at the same time. So there are people who spend a lot of time in the libraries, coming in every day to read, you know, the Wall Street Journal or whatever. Now, co-working space, this is probably the number 2 space that independent consultants will find themselves in. The co-working space is affordable, it's scalable, it can be upgraded or downgraded. So you're looking what you have in your community. We have a recent co-working space that opened up down the street from me. They have everything. The small end of things is like a cubicle, and you can move up into your own private office space. We're not quite as advanced as some co-working spaces. I mean, some will have minimally, just like you could sit down at like a library table and have that space as a place to work with free Wi-Fi and then different things. Your universities oftentimes have these as well. WeWork was a thing, and I guess I don't know the whole story on WeWork, but everybody says it was a fantastic thing to see rise and fall super quickly. So that's what I'm hearing about WeWork, but that was kind of the big growth chain that happened. And so but that's an example. There's a lot. Most of the co-working spaces I see are kind of locally and privately owned. There's also a problem here with the cons. You know, you could have distractions and noise if you're in an open space. You may not have the privacy that you're looking for, and you know, you may or may not have that space for meeting facilities. I think the con really here, and I didn't write it in here, is if you're going to have a coworker or an employee, it's only going to work for so long until, I mean, you may or may not be sharing a space. You may need to have private offices. At a certain point, it just makes more sense to get into a lease space, which is the next slide. So lease space, there's a lot of really, I kind of went towards the the main idea is like you get into like a triple net lease. But I actually have never done that, but I put that in here. A lease space can be anything from an all-inclusive space, and that's usually what I have, where they pay for the air and the water and all the utilities and the insurance, and you just pay a certain amount per month. I've actually been in something that was a lease space. It was kind of like a hybrid between a lease space and a co-working space, where it was an office suite that used to be operated by a company, and they went under. And the owner of the building said, well, I'm just going to lease out each one of these spaces independently. And so that was my first lease space, and that worked out nice. The pro can be, you can lock in your price, and it frees up capital. So meaning you don't have, this is freeing up capital relevant to the next slide, which is purchasing space. So you're not dedicating a lot of money towards upfront costs of building a place or buying a place. You may be able to find a nicer location that you couldn't afford to buy by working with a lease space. It's existing. So I mean, I'm in a lease space right now. It's the same kind of a situation as the last one, where there's about, I think, 15 offices on this floor, and really only 6 of them are occupied. So we have room to grow. And it's an old building that it's kind of forgotten about by the owners. I think it's just they're holding on to it because it's in a prime location in the city, but they don't want to do anything with it. So we get pretty good rates here, and we could grow down the hall when and if we want to do that. And so, but anyway, the pros are you may be able to lock in a price. I kind of put that in quotes because the truth is, at some point they may want to raise your rates, and you don't have as much control over that. I mean, the big con to lease space is you're spending a lot of money for space that you're not getting a return on, right? There's no equity there. NNN is short for triple net, or net. Some people will say net. It's a lease agreement on property where the tenant promises to pay all the expenses of that property, which includes property taxes, building insurance, and maintenance. So basically, it's like you own it, except, well, you don't. You pay all that amount. And this is one of those things that a lot of us, particularly who come out of the nonprofits or the university system, go, I've never even heard of such a thing. And it's new for a lot of us. So it's something, if you're thinking about leasing space and you're getting into a space, and I'm sure Ann, I want to hear Ann talk about this, because I'm sure she's probably in a triple net lease situation, but it's the sort of thing where you want to make sure you understand it before you get involved with this, because you could sit down and think you understand it all, and then you find yourself, oh my God, I didn't realize all the other expenses that come along with this, that come along in addition to the lease amount that I'm giving to these folks. You may still have upfront costs here too, just like purchase space, because you may be given a shell of a building and you need to fill it out. You need to build in the walls and build in the floor and build in the kitchen and the bathrooms and things like that. And so that often is a negotiation with the owner. I've thought about that, and I'm not entirely sure whether I want to do that or not. But you know, there's a shell next to my dentist. She owns the whole building, and it'd be neat to kind of fill that out and do what I want in the extra space. It'd be a bit like owning it. And I did put variable costs here that they may raise the rent. The second item under pros, I want you to pay attention to that. You may have the opportunity to sublease the space to yourself. This is something my lawyer brought up, and I always questioned this and I didn't exactly understand it. So the idea here is you've got the landowner, the property owner, leasing the space to you as an individual, who then turns around and leases the space to your company, right? So you're effectively putting a person between your company and the landowner. That person, you could actually take, let's say they charge you $1,500 a month for your lease rate, which is a little bit low, but let's just use that for an example. And you lease it back to yourself, to your company, for $3,000. So that gives you a $1,500 profit that you can take as an individual. There's a lot of things to think about with your accountant on this, and, but it is a legal thing that he talked to me about, and it's something you may want to think about. It's another way to kind of, at the end of the day, we as independent consultants are finding ways to take our profits in the business and make them our personal profits without a huge tax burden. So that's another way to think about doing that. But that should probably be its own topic another day, another conversation. See, I forget who wrote this, but somebody else subleases her space enough to cover her own lease. That's awesome. Good for them. Purchase space. And I think this is like, for some of us, this feels like the ultimate independence, right? We are independent consultants because we want freedom. And this is the ultimate idea of freedom. I own my building. I can do what I want to do in my building. There's a lot of costs associated with this. But on the pro side of it, you can build equity as the market increases. If you're in a desirable area, if you buy a building for $250,000, you might be able to sell it for $500,000 someday. You never know if things go your way. But it may go the opposite direction too. There's no guarantees in all of this. You don't have to worry about those sorts of things when you lease, if you're worried about decreasing. But if you have, positive outlook on these things, you might just believe you're gonna get something out of it. The big problem, you've got fixed costs. You set up a mortgage just like you do for your home. Actually, a little bit different, but your mortgage, and you're going to spend a certain amount on your mortgage per month. Now, your taxes will probably vary based upon your community and all the other things that go on out there. But it is nice to know that you own your own building, you the boss, right? That meaning if you choose to paint your building pink, you can paint your building pink as long as it fits within the local building codes. You can build a wall or tear down a wall. You can build out a kitchen. You don't have to worry about whether that's something that's going to fly with the landowners. And you have enough room to lease space to others. And that's certainly a good idea. If you have the ability to build a little extra space and you can set that aside, you can have a little bit of extra income that is, I don't know who wrote it. Let's see. Susan. Oh, she says that her friend subleases her space for enough to cover her own lease. The con, though, is, I said the market decreases. There's an opportunity loss, and this is the big thing you want to think about buying a space, and this is the thing that's kept me from doing this. It's an expensive upfront cost. You need to have a down payment and all these things. Now, if the down payment for your building is, just say it's $100,000, and if you have $100,000, you could either take that $100,000 and invest in a new employee or other expenses that are going to benefit your business, or you can put it as a down payment on your building. That's that's a hard decision to make, but I think a lot of people may choose to invest in their business, and so that's the upfront cost. But you also are going to have maintenance. You're going to have to continue up. Now, if you're in a triple net lease, you'll still have maintenance. So that's the deal with that. If you're in a fixed cost or an all-inclusive kind of a setup like I am, the maintenance is covered by the landowners. There's plenty to talk about here, and as we do with these chats, I give you some ideas, and we'll stop and we'll talk about it in just a second. Now, let's talk some creative ideas. So you could always think about negotiating a quote-unquote free space with a client. Some clients like the idea that you're in their office. If you're doing a lot of work with them, you need to make sure you're thinking about the subcontractor agreement and make sure that it doesn't appear that you are an employee looking like a subcontractor and they have any IRS issues. But I assume that's not the case. Clients may want to find new and different ways to work with you, and it may give you easy access to new ideas and opportunities to grow your business. And a lot of clients, at least in my business and education, the regional offices, they've had to scale down. So a lot of them have a lot of space. And I spent, I think, 2.5, 3 years in a quote unquote free space with a client. Actually, they were able to put my space into their contract, and they were able to get rent off of me. I just wanted free space, but they were able to work something creative with their federal contract. So ask around. You'll find people who might have access space, who might want to lease space to you. Like I said, just like with the client situation, you may want to see if, and this is where if you're involved in your local community and any civic organizations, just, while you're sitting next to somebody at a meeting, ask around, hey, do you know anybody who has extra space? You'd be surprised. I also negotiated a space at a local university. Same kind of idea with the quote unquote free space with the client. I agreed to provide some assistance with talking about grant writing and the kind of things that we do that I would do for free, to be honest with you. And they said, in exchange, we'll give you some space. And it was space where me and some grad students got to work for a couple of years. I had that for 2 years. And you might just look around. We have a building right next to me. It never worked out, but I know it's been unoccupied for a year and a half. They used to have it had it full pre-COVID, but it's a local law firm, and they just haven't used it. And I reached out to them, and we went back and forth with some negotiations, and it was pretty pricey. But it hadn't occurred to them to lease it out until I brought it up to them. So just paying attention to what's going on in your community, there may be a space, and you probably get better negotiated rate there when you're bringing something to them that they didn't expect, rather than the people who are actively trying to pitch what's going on. So here's my 5.5 key office space ideas. If you're going to buy, you need to make sure you have about a 15% down payment for whatever you intend to spend on that. And that's something you want to talk about with the bank. But 15% seems to be the right number. I think that's based upon small business administration loans that you'd qualify for. Sometimes you might be able to get it in lower. I think they might have some better rates now. If you can pay yourself rent, you'll probably want to do that like I did. I pay my wife $265.49 per month. You know what? I'm not sure I paid her this month. I got to do that later. I'm sure she's wondering about that. Make sure you understand how much you need. Don't overbuy unless you want to lease the space, and that makes sense. Make sure you're reading your contracts. Be sure to involve a lawyer. Lawyers are expensive, but they usually save you money in the long run. Think creatively. And so we all have social networks, and so feel free to reach out to this group and think about that. Think about what are some creative ways to go about getting some space that's going to work best for you and work best for your business. Thanks for listening. Here's our upcoming sessions. Next week, we're going to have Mary Frances Porter. She's going to be talking about reinventing your business model, valuing your services with GoMoney. By the way, it's GoMoney. I don't know if you guys picked up on that. I always want to say K with a hard K, but it's GoMoney, one twist. Then we're going to have another panel discussion at the end of the month, and then going on from there. So with that, I'm going to pause the recording and stop the share.